This is Rabbi Chaim Brovender, Rosh Yeshiva, the WebYeshiva, and we're going to learn a little about the parsha today. The parsha is called Vayakel. Now, you know that this parsha is kind of totally unreasonable because the last five parshiyot of the book of Shemot, Truma, Tetzaveh, Kitisa, Vayakel, and Pekudei, that the last two of them, Vayakel and Pekudei, are a repeat of the first and second of the five, Truma and Tetzaveh, and they both give great detail in how to build the Mishkan. The Mishkan is the tabernacle that was built in the Midbar, in the desert, after the Torah was given to Bnei Yisrael through the agency of Moshe Rabbeinu. The parashiyot of Truma and Tetzaveh discuss in great detail the utensils that are necessary for the building of the Mishkan, the materials that were necessary, the building of the enclosure within the larger chatzer of the Mishkan, of this tabernacle. And except for the order of things, the parshiot of Vayakel and Pekudei pretty much do exactly the same thing. So that's a problem that we have. Rashi, of course, has taught us again and again that the words of the Torah have to be taken very seriously and that repetitions have to be understood and that clarifications are necessary. And we stand aghast at the fact that Vayakel Pekudei are a repeat of Truma Tetzaveh. What sort of Torah necessitated that kind of repeat, a repetition? It's not at all clear to us. How that might have happened. In fact, if you learn parshat hashavua with Rashi, you'll notice that on the parshiyot of Truma and Tetzaveh, there's extensive Rashi interpretation, but on the parshiyot of Vayakel and Pekudei, there's very little, because for Rashi, he's already done it. He's explained Vayakel Pekudei in Truma Tetzaveh, so that it's hard to understand these. I mean, of course, the parsha of Kitisa, I just want to make sure that we know where we are on the page. The parasha of Kitisa is the parasha of the Egel HaZahav. In other words, what divides up the first two parashiyot about the Mishkan, Truma, Tetzaveh, and the last two parashiyot about the Mishkan, Vayakel, Pekudei, is the story of Bnei Yisrael and the Egel HaZahav, the golden calf. It was certainly a low point in the history of Am Yisrael, and it divides up the two stories about the Mishkan, which are basically the same. It's hard to say there are two stories. Now, beyond that, we could ask ourselves, why was it that, as the Rishonim did ask, why was it that Moshe Rabbeinu decided to teach Bnei Yisrael about the Mishkan at this time when he came down with the Torah after 40 days on the mountain? This is the second time he was on the mountain for 40 days, and he comes down from that mountain with the Luchot HaEvan, with the stone tablets, and he gives Bnei Yisrael the Torah, which apparently is the Torah of the Mishkan. Let's build the Mishkan. It's a very important thing, and this is the appropriate time. To answer that question, I think we should let's look at two psukim that appear in the parasha of Vayakel and have to do with the building of the kior. You see the pasuk? Here we are. Vayaz et hakior. So we know that the Mishkan was actually built under the authority of Moshe Rabbeinu, Betzalel, Oliav. They were the artisans, the brains behind it, and the last thing that they made was the kior. Now the kior, thanks to Rabbi Sachs, we have a picture of the kior, or whoever it is that this was copied from. I'm not sure who these people walking around. I guess they're Kohanim. The Kohanim, before they entered into the Beit HaMikdash or the Mishkan, they were similar. I mean, many things in the Beit HaMikdash were built according to the guidelines of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle. Outside of the Beit HaMikdash, before they would go into the Beit HaMikdash, was this kior, which was like a tureen, right, in which there was water that had to be schlepped from someplace else and brought to the kior, and the kior had spigots, and you were able to let the water run on your feet and your hands, and that was a necessary prerequisite to entering the Kodesh Kodashim, so that the status of the kior as a kli that is connected to the Mishkan / Mikdash is not perfectly clear, because even though it was necessary, it was outside of the Beit HaMikdash and serviced the Kohanim as they came in and out in order to do the melacha of a Kodesh. So in the pasuk that I'm looking at, Vayas et hakiyor, nechoshet. Nechoshet is copper. Copper is soft, it's nice, it has a good look to it. That kano nechoshet. Kano is the base that it sat upon. There's the tureen and there's the base. It wasn't on the ground, it was on this kano. B'mar'ot hatzovot, b'mar'ot hatzovot. Now these are two words that appear only here, and we're not sure exactly what they mean. Mar'ot, in Hebrew, in modern Hebrew, the word for mirror is mar'ah, taken from this word, mar'ot, and hatzovot. Hatzovot really means that they put it together. The pile of nechoshet was used to build this tureen. I'm not sure exactly how they did it. I mean, how they made the nechoshet, the copper, into something really hard and stable. But I guess that Betzalel and Oliav knew how to do that. Asher tzav'u petach or moed. We'll leave out the word tzav'u. I don't know exactly. Also piled up. Right? Mar'ot. So we had those words, mar'ot, tzovot, asher tzav'u, whatever tzovot means, that's what tzav'u means. Petach Ohel Moed, the opening to the Ohel Moed. Ohel Moed is the place in which it was divided into two, the inside, the 2/3 and 1/3. The 2/3 had the menorah in it, the Mizbeach Aktoret, and the 1/3 had the Aron Kodesh in it, in which there were the Luchot HaEvan that Moshe Rabbeinu brought down, and then other things as well. This is, if you remember that, you have a good idea. So there's a pasuk. The pasuk tells me something. It says that there was something that's not written in Truma, in Tetzaveh, in Kitisa, where the beginning of Kitisa is also about the Kiyor. So this pasuk tells me something about the Kiyor. It says it was Nechoshet, which is a shiny, good-looking kind of metal. That the kiyor was the choshet, and the kano was the choshet. The stand that it was on was also made of nechoshet. B'marot hatzov ot. Marot, again, I told you, maybe it means something that either it's shiny or it's reflection, or you could see your own face reflected in the copper. Asher tzav'u petach ol moed. Now, why the Torah adds marot atzov ot, or what it is that the Torah is adding, we don't know. And Rashi takes the trouble to explain this to us at great length, explaining to us in great length in a statement that we're going to look at carefully. Just 1 second. Marot atzovot. Rashi says this: Benot Yisrael hayu biadan marot. So Rashi says, first of all, we're talking about Benot Yisrael. It's not known to us that Benot Yisrael had a different obligation to bring donations for the Mishkan than the men did. I mean, everybody did what they could, donated what they could donate. Here Rashi says, Benot Yisrael o yu biadan marot. Bnei Yisrael had mirrors. Shero ot bahen. In case you don't know what a mirror is, Rashi says you could see yourself in them. You see yourself in them. Marot bahen. Kishehen mitkashtot. When they apply makeup, they want to look good, so they have to look in a mirror. You have to see what you're doing and how the result is turning out. V'af otan lo ikvu milahavi. And even though they were very attached to these marot, and they were very important to them, af otan, even they, the mirrors, lo ikvu milahavi, they did not stop and say, we don't want to bring them. No, they brought them. They brought them as well. Even though they weren't just raw material, they were made into mirrors, and mirrors were handy, apparently, according to Rashi. Milahavi lenidvat hamishkan. In order to donate, they donated their mirrors for the building of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle. Okay, that's marot. So Rashi says, if you're wondering where these marot came from, who had marot in Yetziat Mitzrayim? The women. They had mirrors. They had to look good, and they felt it was very important to look good. And so they were even willing to part with the mirrors that were so important to them for the benefit of the Mishkan. Vayamo eis Moshe bahem. The Rashi now is telling another story. Vayamo eis Moshe bahem. Moshe found them disagreeable. He didn't want to take them. He didn't want to accept the donation. Imagine that. Mipnei she'asuyim liyetzer hara. Because Rashi explains that Moshe did not want to take the mirrors from the women, because the mirrors, for Moshe at least, represented Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination that brings us to bad places. You're not going to build the Mishkan out of things that bring you to bad places, the Yetzer Hara. Omar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and so Moshe Rabbeinu was complaining, or decided, or thought that we should prevent the women from bringing these mirrors. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kabel, And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, no, you're wrong, Moshe Rabbeinu. You have the right idea usually, but in this case, you're mistaken, Kabel. Ki elu chavivin alai min hakol. These give me greater pleasure than any other donations. These are the best donations of all, the mirrors that the women bring. Sha'al yedehem ha'amidu hanashim tziva'ot rabot b'mitzrayim. Al yedei zeh. You have to see that word, see tziva'ot, that word tziva'ot. It's used in a different way than we thought it would be used in the pasuk. But here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Al Yidehem, because of these mirrors, Ha'emidu Hanashim Tzivaot Rabot B'Mitzrayim. The women caused armies of Jews to be born in Mitzrayim. Kshayu Ba'alehem Yigeim Ba'avodat Perech. What a story. The husbands would come home from a day's work tired, worn out. Ayu holchot, and they would say, I'm tired. Just let me sleep. Ayu holchot umolichot lahem. They would go, the women, umolichot lahem ma'achal umishteh. They would prepare food and drink, umachilot otam, and they would give them food to eat. The husbands, give the husbands food to eat. Oh, what a life. V'notlot hamarot, they would take the mirrors in hand, these mirrors, the very mirrors that we are talking about. V'kol achat ro'a atzma im ba'ala and everybody saw, and all these women, kol achat, va'achat, atzma, b'kol achat ro'a atzma im ba'ala b'mar'eh o mishadlato b'dvarim. She convinced him. She said words that were convincing at that time, that they were looking at the picture in the mirror, lomar, ani na'em mimcha, or ani na'em mimech. Everybody would claim that they were better looking than the other, the husband and the wife, and the wife and the husband. Tokach meviot leba'alehem lidei ta'ava. They bring their husbands to desire the wife in his kakot lahem, and they would live with them. Just 1 second. In his kakot lahem, just to have sex with them. Umit abrot v'yoldot, and they would get pregnant, and they would have children. Sham, right there at that place. Right there, the Shneimar, Tachat HaTapuach or Artich. Tapuach is the food that they ate. With the tapuach, they were enthused by each other. V'zeu Shneimar b'mar'ot hatzovot. Mar'ot hatzovot. So, if we stop here for a moment, according to Rashi, there's a story in this pasuk that mentions the donations of the Mar'ot HaTzovot, which we now can interpret as being the mirrors that led to the army of Am Yisrael, to the 600,000 that left Mitzrayim and got to Har Sinai. They were there because of the Mar'ot HaTzovot. Because of the Mar'ot. That's one story that we just learned in Rashi. But there's another story, a more difficult story, one that's hard for us to understand, about a difference of opinion between Moshe Rabbeinu and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Moshe Rabbeinu said to these women, we don't want these mirrors. These mirrors are mirrors of desire. They're mirrors of a need, a human need, which could be also classified in many cases as being ra, as being evil. And it took a direct conversation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu to convince Moshe Rabbeinu that he was mistaken. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, these mirrors, they just brought good into the world. Because they created Am Yisrael. Without these mirrors, we would have been devastated. Paro would have killed enough of the Jews to make us into an insignificant and irrelevant kind of a group. But the Mar'ot HaTzovot, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe Rabbeinu, they made the nation of Israel. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu, don't explain to me about good and tov and evil, ra. It's not ra if the result is good, and your argument falls away and we can't deal with it at all. Okay? Rashi then adds. We still have the two things, the two ideas here, right? One idea is that the mar'ot were the cause of great good. And the second idea is that there's a confusion between Moshe Rabbeinu thinks that the mar'ot are ra. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to explain to him that the mar'ot are mar'ot of great significance. Rashi continues and says, "V'naseh ha-kiyor behem." The kiyor. What was the kiyor? It was a tureen with water in it. Naseh ha-kiyor behem. Shehu l'sum shalom ben ish le'ishto. And the purpose of this kiyor, as we know, is to make peace between a man and his wife. Lashkot mimayim shebetocho et shekinela ba'ala. You know that story? The woman is sequestered in a room with another man. The husband sees her, but he doesn't know what's going on in that room, or if anything is going on in that room. But he feels distressed that his wife has abandoned him for another, and he's not sure. He's not sure. So we know that the mesotah, the waters that are given to this woman to drink, if she lives, then we understand that the safek, that the question, the doubt has been resolved. She's innocent. And so that is like the resolution of a difficult doubt. There's no longer any doubt, that if there's no doubt, the husband and the wife can be in peace together, can live in peace together. So that's what Rashi says. Lasum shalom ben ish leishto, making peace between a man and his wife. Lahashkot mimayim shebetocho et shekinela ba'ala, to drink the waters in order to dispense with the question that the husband had about his wife. Vayasba v'gomer v'kiyor v'chano, and the kiyor and its stand, lo huzkuru sham, were not mentioned in that parasha at all. Lamadeta shelo haya nechoshet shel kiyor menachesh menachoshet hatnufa, that it didn't come from, that kiyor didn't come from the choshet hatnufa that they gave as a donation. Kach doresh Rabbi Tanchuma. This is what it says in the drashot of Rabbi Tanchuma. We call it a medrash. We call the medrash Tanchuma. V'chein tirgem unkelus etzlo v'holionim v'agilionim mitargeminan umechazita. Okay. So in any event, what we're left with, I mean, it's very nice. The kiyor is the source of the water that is used to create shalom bein each v'ishto. If there is some doubt about her behavior, and so Rashi brings that. Rashi teaches me or reminds me of that in order to understand that somehow the nechoshet that is used, that comes from the marot, from the mirrors, which is used to build the kiyor, comes because the nechoshet was used in order to generate the creation of a major change in Am Yisrael from a small family group to a large nation that left Mitzrayim on the way to receiving the Torah. But what about the opposition of Moshe Rabbeinu? What about Moshe Rabbeinu's misunderstanding in this case? I mean, it can't be that Moshe Rabbeinu just wasn't thinking or wasn't looking hard at what was going on, or just didn't have the right idea about what the marot were for. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, these marot represent to me Yetzer Hara, the bad in us, the fact that we kind of get confused about where we are and what we're doing and where we should be. He said that that's called Ra. Why was it that HaKadosh Baruch Hu that had to upbraid him? I would think it's because Moshe Rabbeinu was a good thinker. He was able to understand. So if he was a good thinker and able to understand, how did he make a mistake about this particular matter? And if we wanted to expand the question of Moshe Rabbeinu, we have to remind ourselves that in the beginning of the parsha of Truma, right? Remember the 5 parshiyot, right? Truma, Tetzaveh, Kitisa, Vayikehel, Pekudei. In the beginning of the parsha of Truma, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu that we have to make a collection. We have to ask for donations. We have to build up. We ask for donations not because we're in trouble. We ask for donations because we have to explain to Am Yisrael that building the Mishkan is a cooperative effort. It's the nation of Israel that has to build the Mishkan. Okay, but what is it that we were asked to bring as donations? Sa'av, v'chesef, v'nechoshet, gold and silver and copper. And if it's true for copper, if Moshe Rabbeinu thought it was true for copper, how come Moshe Rabbeinu didn't think it was true for zahav and kesef? I mean, isn't it true that gold and silver can also be described as the root of evil? Financial growth and achievement is something that is often off-putting. People are not able to quite to handle success in monetary matters, in physicality, in the reality of Olam Hazeh. And they were always there. So why was it that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't ask about Zahav and Kesef and Nechoshet in the beginning of Truma? Why did he wait until the Nechoshet became turned into mirrors in order to ask the question that he asked? So the answer may be, an answer that is given, I think, but the answer may be the following. There is raw material and there is the finished product. The raw material of Ra is a function of our determination to wipe out the Ra, not to give it entree into the world in which we live. So when the Torah asks for Zahav, Kesef, and Nechoshet, that's the raw material which could be turned into Ra. There's no doubt about that. But doesn't have to be It doesn't have to be that way. The people who just received the Torah, Har Sinai, on the mountain of Sinai, those people were able to deal with Zahav and Kesef and Nechoshet. They were able to say, I'm taking good things and giving it to the Mishkan. I'm using it for the purpose of Mishkan. And that purpose is uniquely good, Tov, and is denial of Ra. And it's, while the potential of Zahav and Kesef Nechoshet is that they could be Ra, the reality of it in the desert, where the Zahav and the Kesef and the Nechoshet have no value. There's no one to trade with. There's no way to enhance your physical presence in the desert such that you be able to say, I want the honor of being the richest person in my community. No. That can't happen. That can't happen, but the mar'ot hatzovot, that's what Moshe Rabbeinu said. I know that Zahav, Kesef, Nechoshet might be bad, but it could also be really good. And for the people who received the Torah, I'm sure that it is all good. All the donations are good. When it comes to the mar'ot hatzovot, we've already seen them, the way they are used, what happens to them. The negative of the mar'ot has already been proven. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe Rabbeinu, you can't determine the Ra based on how it was used. You could only determine Ra based on the result. And since the result obviously was Tov, there's no Ra in the Marot HaTzovot. So if this interpretation is acceptable, it would turn out that after Matan Torah, the Jews were on a high. And as the Rabbeinu Bechaya explains at great length, Moshe Rabbeinu had to clarify with them or instruct them to kind of create an ongoing high for Am Yisrael called the Mishkan. Wherever they go, they would have that opportunity to go into the Mishkan and to commune with God in a special way. That was the Mishkan. And furthermore, they learned something about the presence of Ra in the world in which we live. Ra is the result and can be defended against. And Moshe Rabbeinu learned that at this time directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's the point that Rashi makes about this pasuk. Have a wonderful Shabbos.